So again, thank you so much, Jamie, for coming today and sharing your thoughts with our audience today. I'm sure everyone's going to find this extremely helpful. So huge thanks.
It was my pleasure. It's really nice to be here with you.
Fantastic. So, without further ado, I've got to say, Jamie Smart is a Sunday Times best-selling author, educator, speaker, and coach who presents regularly at major conferences worldwide. Jamie has keynoted conferences for organizations ranging from the NATO Defense College to the mental health charity Rethink and the Council of Institute and Faculty of Actuaries. His corporate clients range from household names like Hewlett Packard to the specialist works an SME ranked as one of the Sunday Times 100 best small companies to work for. He has appeared on Sky TV and on the BBC, as well as numerous publications including The Times, The Daily Telegraph, The Huffington Post, and Psychologies magazine. As well as Clarity, he is also the author of the books Results, Think Less, Achieve More, The Little Book of Clarity, and The Little Book of Results. So we're talking about clarity, which is a fact. I think everyone needs this. So obviously, I've got to ask, why do you think we are less clear in modern day?
Well, it's funny. I think we can be less or more clear from one day to the next, or from 1 hour to the next. But it's interesting. What I open my book Clarity with is a quote from Herbert Simon, who said, "What information consumes is rather obvious. It consumes the attention of its recipients, and we're inundated with information through everything from social media to Netflix to the internet to artificial intelligence or what have you, which has all kinds of benefits, right? Like there's all kinds of good things about it. But there's a meme which is that data is the new oil, that data is the most precious substance on the planet. But my sense is actually that attention is the most precious substance on the planet. It's not a substance, but the most precious commodity on the planet. So that's what all the social media apps are fighting for, your attention. And if you stop and think about it, your attention is what your moment to moment experience is made of. And so your experience of life is a function of your attention and what you're doing with it. And so it's why clarity is, for many people, harder to find than ever, because we've got all these calls on it. Plus, the world is changing very, very rapidly, which gives us, lots we can be thinking about and that sort of thing. But also, we've been living in a medieval misunderstanding of how our minds work, and that puts stuff on our minds. So we've got a whole bunch of things that are contributing to it, but fortunately there's a very, very simple answer to it.
Yeah. Oh God, it is. You're right. We still have such backward notions with our sort of psychology because it's still seen as sort of something to be fixed. In the very sort of medical sense, isn't it?
Yeah, well, and I mean, psychology it's a very new field, right? Like it's right, it's sort of right at the beginning, but as a field, it's in its pre-paradigm phase. So it's why psychology isn't considered to be a hard science like physics or chemistry or something like that, because the principles that underpin it haven't yet been widely, recognized, and that sort of thing. William James, the kind of the godfather of psychology, said if principles for psychology are ever discovered, it'll be the greatest innovation since man discovered fire. Well, it looks to me like the principles behind psychology have been discovered, but they're just not. Understanding of those principles is not widely distributed at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. It's so complex, and I remember you writing this sentence, and I thought, oh God, yeah, because I know that I've been guilty of this for sure. Which is when you say, "I'll be happy, secure, fulfilled, peaceful, better, successful, okay, when I do this." And it's like, when do you think we like? Why do you think we actually base our happiness on sort of external factors?
Well, I think it's for the same reason that people used to think that the sun went around the earth. It's because it looks like it does, right? Like it's a phenomenon called hedonic forecasting. And as human beings, we believe that we're very good at predicting how we'll feel in future scenarios. But it turns out we're rubbish at it. We're not good at it at all. And so, you don't really have, like, here's the thing. If you, it, if you ask almost anyone in our society, would you like to have a big bag of money? Would you like to win the lottery? That sort of thing. Most people are like, yeah, yeah, I'd love that. Now, even though we know that that's not going to make us happy, it might solve some problems. Might it's not, there's some practical purpose to it, but we know that if being wealthy would make you happy, then OK Magazine would be full of happy people with stable relationships, low therapy bills, no drug problems, all that sort of
Mm,
stuff. But the truth of the matter is, it's no proof against that, and it's because we are confused about how our experience is created. See, we're living in the experience. It seems to us, like we're looking out through little windows in our head at a world out there. That's how it looks. Like, that's how it looks to me, right? But
mm,
what's actually going on is data's pouring in through our senses, and then our deeper psychological and neurological properties are going, what must be out there for me to be receiving this data? And then our psychology literally hallucinate a 3D kind of virtual reality. And we relate to it as though it's an actual reality, which is useful for practical purposes. But then we can do the whole I'll be happy when thing. So we can, there's actually this story in my book Clarity about a fellow called Carl who I was working with. And Carl, he had for years had a dream of getting a Mazda sports car, this Mazda MX-5. And he was sure that once he had it, he would be happy and that would be it. He got it. And within a couple of weeks, he was like, oh man, it didn't work. I guess I needed a Ferrari. So I had a chat with him about this very thing. And he had an insight. He went pop. He suddenly realized, oh, oh, you've been looking outside of you for something that can only come from within you. And it totally changed the game for him. And that was kind of the first insight I had into this. Was I realized, oh, you've been looking outside of you for something that can only ever be found within. Now, I'm not talking about stuff like, I don't know, phones or shoes or cars or houses.
mm,
Obviously, the world is a good place to get those, but the sense of happiness, peace
mm,
of mind, well-being, security, um, calm, resilience, all of those are innate qualities. They're built in. They're happiness is so simple a baby can do it, you know?
mm.
Babies aren't born needing therapy. And the only reason babies are being turned into mentally ill teenagers and adults is because they're being taught things that aren't true, taught things about themselves, about what they're capable of, what they're not capable of, and how their minds work. And those misunderstandings that they're having, like, layered onto them, of literally making them sick.
Yeah. And yeah, you were talking exactly. This is sort of intrinsic motivation, isn't it? We're trying to find that inner happiness through something within rather than externally. And this hedonistic kind of this trying to predict everything. I think it's sort of referred to as like a cognitive distortion, isn't it? But and I think you mentioned this as well, which is about superstitious behavior, which kind of sort of works alongside this sort of distortion. So why do you think people have limited beliefs when it comes to superstitious behavior? And like, can you actually describe to our listeners like what you mean by this?
Well, I'll give you a simple example. Like, I bet everyone who's listening either had or knows a kid who had a teddy bear when they're growing up, a teddy bear, a security blanket, something like that. And the reason we have those transitional objects as little children is because the adults in the room know that the child is going to have a feeling of comfort and security and peace and well-being, and they're going to attribute it to the teddy bear or the blanket or whatever. But that's a trick of the mind, right?
Mm.
Like the teddy bear or the blanket, the teddy bear's full of stuffing. It can't give the child a feeling. That feeling is going to come from within the child 100% of the time.
Mm.
0% of it comes from the teddy bear. And we know that as adults. We can see, yeah, obviously that's what's going on. But then all too often we think it works differently with the adult teddy bears of jobs or partners or achievements or objectives or physical health or um, social status or money in the bank or whatever. And we genuinely believe, just like the little child genuinely believes that their peace and well-being is coming from the bear. As adults, we genuinely believe that our peace, well-being, security is coming from the job, the money, the
Mm.
relationship. When all the while it's coming from the other direction, it's coming from inside. It's coming from inside you. It's
Mm.
where it's always come from. So this is kind of a bold statement I'm making. I'm not saying anyone should take my word for it. It's worth testing it out in your own life and seeing what happens. Um, my my assertion is that every beautiful feeling you've ever experienced is coming from within you.
Yeah. So, what do you think is the power of this insight, essentially?
Well, it's freedom. We live in a world where there's a humanitarian crisis in mental health, and the attempts to treat that humanitarian crisis in mental health with traditional means is like throwing a baked bean at a charging rhinoceros. It's just not uh, fit for purpose. I'm not talking about in any particular individual's case. I'm just like the sheer mass of mental health challenges, but also very importantly, we have to make really really important decisions as a society, as individuals, as companies, and as a civilization, and we need wisdom to be able to do that. We have these amazing technologies, and the exponential nature of digital technology means that things are changing very fast, but our cognitive abilities have mostly developed for a linear world. They haven't developed for an exponential world, and so your innate capacity for insight looks to me like our best bet for trying to hold our own in a world where we've got exponential increase happening.
Yeah, definitely. So, like, how? Okay, so how is a lot of this? Obviously, we're talking about sort of internal kind of motivation. So, how do you think perception is sort of created, and obviously how do we change it? Because obviously a lot of the things that we perhaps sort of strive for, so things like a good job, money, things like that, a lot of it is to do with, I guess, your perception, um that it's good for you, that's the thing that you want to change your life. So
Well,
how
yeah.
do we change that?
Well, here's the thing. I've got nothing to say about what people should want or not want. Like I work on the base. I work with all kinds of different clients. I work with people who are CEOs of companies and people who are coaches and therapists and change workers. I work with military personnel. I've worked with people in prisons. I've worked with all kinds of different people, and every single one of those people is in a unique life situation and has to make their own decisions for their own reasons, which is fair enough. What looks to me like it gets in almost everybody's way is they're confused about two things. They're confused about who they really are, and they're confused about how they're experienced. Having insights into that just takes a lot off your mind, makes things a lot easier. Makes things a lot easier in terms of, well, here's the way I often put it. You know how most people have a lot on their mind, very
Mm.
busy minded? Well, what I teach is a simple understanding that takes things off your mind automatically. So you have the freedom and confidence to do what makes sense to you, to do what matters. and live a beautiful life. Like that's what we all want at the end of the day. We all want to live a beautiful life. We all want to do what we're here to do and have great relationships with the people we care about and uh, create the things that we're inspired to create. So this just makes it easier to do all of that.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, you wrote a formula that I think is quite useful, which is clarity equals capacity minus contamination. So can you just explain like what that is?
So I have a really simple way of putting this, which is you have an innate capacity for clarity. And by clarity, I mean all the different elements that come to us when we've got a clear mind, including love and connection, peace and well being, security, creativity, all that sort of stuff. We have that innate capacity. The only thing that ever gets in the way of it is what I call contaminated thinking, arising from what I call the outside in misunderstanding, the mistaken belief that we're feeling something other than the moment. Like our experience of life is being created from the inside out, real time, 100% of the time. It's kind of wild to think that. It doesn't look like that, right? Like it looks like we're looking out through our eyes and walking around in a world that's already there. And for practical purposes, it is. But our experience of it is being created real time in this hot second. And when we catch a glimpse of that, it simplifies everything. And when we don't know that, we can genuinely feel like our experience is being created from out there and our heads fill up with contaminated thinking. But the moment you see that, the moment you realize where your experience is coming from, it brings you back into the moment and allows you to do what makes sense. It's kind of the same in every field of high performance. When you've got nothing on your mind, you're free to give your best. Whether it's, you know, athletes or musicians or dancers or creatives, everyone always says the same thing when they're not thinking about it, when they're in the zone, when they're in flow. That's when they give their best. So yeah, that's what the clarity equation is, which is clarity equals capacity minus contamination. You have an innate capacity for all these qualities. And the power is in realizing you don't experience that clarity by doing something. It's about what you're not doing. When you're not caught up in contaminated thinking, that clarity can come to the surface.
With that in mind, do you think we can change our behavior around a situation? Hmm.
So, a question I often get is, how do we change our behaviors around a situation? Here's how it looks to me, and this may sound hardcore, especially when you see people doing really, really destructive behaviors, right? We each live in our own thought generated perceptual reality. We're literally each living in a separate perceptual reality. And every human being is doing what makes sense to them at their current level of understanding. So what that means is if the world looked to you like it looks to me, you'd be doing the same things I am. If the world looked the same to me as it does to that guy down the street, I'd be doing the same stuff he is. So if you want to change the behaviors you're currently doing, and I know often people have behaviors that mess with them, like maybe drinking too much or not exercising
Hmm.
enough or eating the wrong foods, or all the
Yeah.
kind of things that people where if I ask people, do you know of some things which you really should be doing but you're not doing them, and that so those kind of behaviors they want to change. Well, I work from the starting point that all the things you're doing and not doing are exactly what makes sense at your current level of understanding of life, of who you are, of how your experience is created. And if you want to change what you do, you need to change what makes sense. And the way you change what makes sense is using your innate capacity for insight and realization. You have a built in evolutionary capacity for insight and realization that brings your map of reality, you could say, up to date. And by your map of reality, I mean your embodied understanding of reality. It brings it more closely into alignment with the truth of how the world works. And every time that happens, your behavior changes. Not only does your behavior change, it changes automatically and effortlessly because people are always doing what makes sense at their current level of understanding.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Jamie.